Deuteronomy 16. Remember, rejoice, and judge righteously. Moses reminded Israel to observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover to the Lord their God, because in that month the Lord brought them out of Egypt by night. They were to sacrifice the Passover from the flock and the herd in the place the Lord chose for his name to dwell. They were not to eat leavened bread with it, but for 7 days they were to eat unleavened bread, the bread of affliction, because they came out of Egypt in haste. This was so they would remember the day they left Egypt, all the days of their lives. No leaven was to be seen in their territory for 7 days, and none of the meat sacrificed was to remain until morning. They were not to sacrifice the Passover within any of their towns, but only at the place the Lord chose. There they were to roast and eat it at sunset, and in the morning return to their tents. Then they were to count 7 weeks from the time they began to put the sickle to the standing grain, and keep the Feast of Weeks to the Lord. They were to rejoice before the Lord, they, their sons and daughters, their servants, the Levite, the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow, remembering that they were slaves in Egypt. They were also to keep the Feast of Booths for 7 days, after gathering the produce from the threshing floor and winepress. They were to rejoice in this feast, because the Lord would bless all their work. 3 times a year all the males were to appear before the Lord, at the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Booths. They were not to appear empty-handed, but each was to give as he was able, according to the blessing the Lord had given. Moses then spoke about appointing judges and officers in all their towns to judge the people with righteous judgment. They were not to pervert justice, show partiality, or take a bribe, because a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. They were to pursue justice alone, so that they might live and possess the land the Lord was giving them. They were not to plant an Asherah tree beside the altar of the Lord, or set up a sacred pillar, because the Lord hated such things. Next comes Deuteronomy 17, where Moses speaks about proper worship, kingship, and obedience to God's law.